So this evening, I'll be presenting to you reentry schedule options for K-12 students here in Lexington County School District 1. To create these options, we convened a group of school administrators at each grade level, well, I should say grade band, from across the district to draft initial scheduling options for reentry. Members of individual divisions and departments across central services also supported our drafting team as we developed our plans and framework. Both the drafting team and central service administrators studied a number of reentry plans from across the country to inform our design. Once a first draft of schedules was produced, we asked for feedback from loads and loads of stakeholders across our district. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Phillips for a couple of minutes to discuss that process.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Is this working? Did I do it? Okay. So we did not act, the task force did not act in isolation. We did seek feedback from a variety of sources. We gathered feedback from many of our stakeholders, including parents, students, the medical community, teachers, nurses. We did used a variety of instruments. We used a pulse survey from Hanover Research, which we sent out to all parents and asked them to have students do it as well. We did it, the same survey for school and district level staff. And we got up to almost 4,000 parents, 189 student responses, over 1,500 school level staff, and 174 district level staff on that. We did a lessons learned survey to try to get information from our stakeholders about how things went during the closure with regard to the remote learning process. And we focused those surveys on established groups within the district, like the Teacher Leadership Council and the Support Staff Advisory and some Central Services folks. Beyond that, Josh, I did it. There we go. Okay. After that, we also conducted focus groups with parents, doctors, students, teachers, nurses, and support staffs to show them some of the proposed models, get their feedback on how those can be improved upon. We also conducted a thought exchange, and many of you may have participated in that. Sort of a different approach, less of a survey and more of a virtual town hall where people could express their thoughts and then rate the thoughts of others. And what that allowed us to do was get those thoughts that were most popular sort of floated up to the top. And we had a tremendous response to that. 8,600 or so parents or guardians and 2,400 staff. And in the parents alone, we had over 300,000 ratings of comments. So that was some interesting data as well. And what came out of all of this feedback were basically two differing views. So we have a group of folks who are very, very concerned about returning to a face-to-face reopening because of the safety of students and staff. And then on the other side, you have those who have a desire to return to school as normally as possible with the inclusion of some reasonable precautions. What we found, though, is that there are areas in which both of those groups agree. And this is where we sort of focused a lot of our efforts and where things aligned. So if we are remote, folks believe that new learning must take place. It must be structured learning. So there needs to be some schedule, some structure to that instruction. We need clear communication about our plans and about expectations for students, for staff, etc. Any schedule that's developed needs to be reasonable and needs to have flexibility and options. So parents need to have the option of a remote or virtual learning experience. or a hybrid experience, or a face-to-face experience. And then, of course, cleaning and hygiene and sanitization of all the buildings and equipment. They also agreed that we needed to take efforts to manage teacher workload, because we're asking teachers to do a lot of different things now. Lowering class sizes to facilitate social distancing. Establishing clear expectations for staff, families, students, et cetera, in the environment that we're living in. There was a lot of concern about teacher attendance. So how are we going to deal with absences if a teacher has to go out and our sub's going to be readily available? Those things that Mr. Stacy's office is working with. Teachers wanted to make sure they were going to have the support and time to prepare for whatever models we establish. And they wanted a quick development and communication of a plan. So these are those areas where we had common ground, where those sort of two differing groups of folks said, whatever we do, we got to do these things. So I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie because she did the lion's share of the work with the task force here, and let her talk to you about those models.
So based on the feedback from our stakeholder groups, we have developed reentry plans, again, like I said, across grade bands. To begin with, we'll look at our elementary options. For students in kindergarten through grade 5, we're going to offer families, or we are suggesting that we offer families 2 options for reentry in the fall. That would be the family model and the home-based model. Guardians of students will have the opportunity to select which of these choices they would think is best for their family and their children this summer. We're going to present information about both tonight. And we'll begin with the family model first. So our goal in the family model was twofold. We wanted to protect students and staff members' health while also maximizing instructional time and support, as Dr. Little described in the beginning. In this model, instructional time is maximized with all students attending school each day during scheduled school hours. In addition, we believe that as our community continues to reopen and as parents and guardians return to work, that this model best supports the homeschool partnerships that we have been developing while also effectively addressing student growth academically and socially. The family model treats homerooms or homeroom classes like families, and as a part of that family, students will remain in one classroom throughout the school day, with the exception of recess and other outdoor instruction. Students are not required to practice social distancing or wearing face coverings while in that family model classroom. This means that related arts teachers and other support staff teachers will come to students' family model classrooms to conduct their course or to take students outside. It also means that visiting teachers like related arts teachers and support staff teachers will wear personal protective equipment like face masks during those class experiences. Students will enjoy recess opportunities with their classmates only, and schools will serve breakfast and lunch in the classroom setting. In the family model, students will have learning and social experiences listed on the screen. This includes, of course, English language arts, math, science, and social studies. They will also have multiple recess breaks and frequent movement breaks throughout the day, as well as opportunities for social and emotional learning. In addition, if a teacher team teaches across multiple sets of students, teachers will move between classrooms and students will remain in their homeroom class. For instance, this is how our immersion programs in elementary school would function. Again, our adult staff would be wearing PPE or personal protective equipment if they were to move classrooms. So as we were planning the family model option, we specifically wanted to address how support services would be given to children as they need. These services include special education, gifted and talented, school counseling, response to intervention, English as a second language, and other school-specific supports. We are suggesting that schools use both a push-in and a pull-out model to provide these services to children. In both of these, whether it's a push-in or a pull-out, our teachers will be wearing personal protective equipment. And I did want to kind of name some of what those models could look like. So if teachers are pushing into a family model classroom, they would be working with a small group while in the class with their homeroom teacher, and they would be wearing PPE at the time. You might also have a staff member come to a class and pull an individual student out to do individual conferring. Again, the staff would be wearing PPE. The staff might also pull a small group of children from the same homeroom class or family model classroom. Again, the staff would be wearing PPE. And finally, if needed, staff may pull children from multiple classrooms, but in cases of that, both the staff and students would be wearing personal protective equipment, and they would be practicing social distancing as much as possible. So in order to support this family model option, we also review the start and stop time for the school day. So typically in elementary schools in the past, school started around 7:40 a.m. in most sites and ended at 2:20 p.m. Please note that our suggested start and stop time for the coming school year will be different. We are suggesting that elementary schools start at 7:50 a.m. and end at 2 p.m. We believe this slightly shortened day will allow schools to stagger both entry into the building as well as dismissal from the building in the best way possible to keep children and staff safe. In order to help young children practice these procedures for social distancing and the staggered entry and dismissal, our team wanted to recommend that elementary students should transition back into school that first week in an incremental fashion. So what this means as a whole school, like in the whole school context, is that half of the student body would come on days 1 and 2. The second half of the school would come days 3 and 4, and then all children would be there on day 5. Each school would provide specifics to guardians regarding the start date for their specific children or family. So from a teacher's perspective, though, this means that half of his or her class would be there again on day 1 and 2, the other half there on days 3 and 4, with the full class there on day 5.
Is that just the first week or that's ongoing?
Just the first week.
Okay.
So student and staff safety was vitally important in our planning, and we believe it should be kept paramount as we continue to make decisions. So we wanted to make sure you understood that we were going to be using and creating guidance from the CDC and from DHEC, as well as our district's operations and human resources departments, to address instances when a student or staff member were to test positive for COVID-19. In these cases, though, instruction will not stop. We will continue to provide quality learning experiences for our children in a distance learning format during any time of quarantine. Because of that last statement, I want to make sure I explain to you the next thing. So distance learning Wednesdays. In our end-of-year work plan reviews with administrative teams and school leadership teams, they repeatedly mentioned how collaborative and resilient both our educators and students were during the spring closure. But the other kind of theme in the conversation has been how hard it has been for our teachers to brainstorm, design, and execute distance learning in such a tight turnaround. So to ensure that quality instruction for all children, both in the face-to-face and distance learning environment, our team believes it's critical to provide teachers with time to collaborate and time to plan engaging experiences for children around new learning. This is why we are advocating for elementary teachers to have distance learning days every other week. The distance learning Wednesdays ensure educators have time to collaborate, plan, and design learning experiences that support our children in becoming effective communicators, collaborators, creators, and critical thinkers. These Wednesdays will also give educators consistent access to professional learning that they need to develop technical and adaptive skills. And finally, distance learning Wednesdays will give them time to engage in parent conferences so that we can figure out the supports they need both in school and out of school. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there is also a home-based model. And in the home-based model, instruction will be provided virtually through a variety of formats with accountability measures in place for progress monitoring and academic growth. We will also be providing virtual support services and social emotional learning supports in a variety of formats such as telephone calls, emails, and virtual platform meetings like Zoom or Google Hangout. So for students in grades 6 through 12, we will offer 2 options for reentry in the fall: the AB hybrid schedule and a virtual instruction model. Guardians of students, again, will have the opportunity to select which of these schedules best fits their family and their children later this summer. We will present information about both, and we will start with the hybrid schedule. So in a hybrid schedule model, students will be assigned to either a cohort A group or a cohort B group to support social distancing. For students, this means that they will have 2 days of face-to-face instruction and 3 days of virtual learning each week. In the face-to-face instructions, teachers will still be using our district's instructional model, which we call the student engagement model. On those face-to-face days, they will still have mini lessons, they still will have small group differentiated instruction, and they still will engage in individual conferring. On virtual days, educators will use structures that empower children to be leaders of their own learning. Content and learning on virtual days will be a continuation of what they had done in the face-to-face environment previously. To support student growth, schools will schedule virtual opportunities for students to work with their teachers in real time to address academic and social needs. In addition, teachers will design and schedule virtual peer collaboration opportunities for students to continue their work in a group setting. So at the middle level, the AB hybrid schedule will have 7 periods each day when students are in a face-to-face group. Please note that the start and stop time for middle school has been adjusted for the 2021 school year as well. Currently, our middle schools start, like this year, our middle schools started at 8:05 typically and ended around 3:30. For next year, we are recommending that middle school start at 9 a.m. and end at 4:15 p.m. From the student perspective, the AB hybrid schedule provides them with a well-rounded middle school experience. Each student has a rich course of study that includes 4 core classes, 2 exploratory classes, and 1 advocacy period. To aid in the social distancing aspects, the team built in 10-minute transition times between classes and is recommending staggered class changes. This time period presents schools with the opportunity to design the safest transition plan possible at each grade band. All periods in this schedule will be 55 minutes, with the exception of period 2, which was made longer for non-instructional class tasks like ordering lunch. From the teacher perspective, core teachers will teach 4 classes and have 2 dedicated periods, 1 for planning and 1 for virtual support of students. Exploratory teachers will have 5 classes and provide support to their virtual day cohort when they are not with students in a face-to-face setting. Specialized programs and supports, again in this model, will be still possible. Students who receive response to intervention, English as a second language, or special education supports will still have access to these services on face-to-face and virtual days. Students who need this added layer of intervention may attend pull-out services for special ed, response to intervention, or ESOL in lieu of one of their exploratory classes, or they may be eligible for additional supports. This allows all children to have at least 1 exploratory class. Furthermore, students will experience differentiation through accelerated coursework like they always have, and immersion students will continue to take a language and passport class under this model. Lastly, the advocacy period and lunch would be combined. This allows for more face-to-face instructional time when students are in the building, while providing social and emotional support, as well as time for children to decompress with their peers in the advocacy setting. So for middle school, secondary teachers as a whole, we are recommending virtual learning Wednesdays. Like the elementary model plan, these same teachers need time to provide virtual student supports, to collaborate and plan engaging student experiences, and to engage in rich professional learning. For secondary teachers in particular, we felt like this was important because they are changing from a primarily face-to-face instructional model to one that is hybrid. These Wednesdays would occur each week. We believe that these virtual learning Wednesdays ensure educators have the quality time they need to collaborate with one another to design hybrid learning experiences and supports that empower children to be effective communicators, collaborators, creators, and critical thinkers. In addition, these Wednesdays give educators consistent access to the professional learning they will need to develop the technical and adaptive skills for hybrid and virtual learning. So in order to support all students and families in a hybrid environment as described, our team is recommending that students have multiple contacts from school staff during the 3 virtual days, easing parents' concern if their child is at home. Each day, teachers will have a dedicated period where they will be available for virtual office hours. This allows educators to provide instructional support and services to a cohort of students attending school that day in a virtual setting. In addition, students who need additional interventions will be given the supplemental support in the virtual setting, and school counselors and advocacy teachers may meet with children through virtual meetings. Students with siblings in the same school or in the same attendance area, including children in blended families, will be placed in the same cohort to ease childcare, transportation, and scheduling concerns. Lastly, we are investigating community partnerships that may provide relief for parents regarding childcare concerns. So before we dig into the student perspective of the high school schedule, I wanted you to note again the schedule time change for next year. This past year, our high schools typically started school around 8:20 a.m. and they would end around 3:30 p.m. For the 2020-21 school year, the draft team recommends that high schools start at 9 a.m. and end at 3:50 p.m. Additionally, the high school schedule has a similar structure to the middle school in that there are 2 cohorts or groups in which students could be scheduled. In the AB hybrid schedule for high school, students will typically take around 6 to 8 credits over the course of the year, depending on graduation requirements. Students who travel to LTC or a center of advanced study, we're advising that they stay at those schools for the entire day if possible. We're also advising that course offerings remain the same with the addition of some 100% virtual options. And these course offerings will still include international baccalaureate, advanced placement, and dual enrollment options that we have always had. To support families in transitioning to this model, again, we will ensure that siblings and individuals in the same household will be scheduled in the same cohort. This includes siblings that may go to a feeder middle school. So from the teacher perspective, in a high school, teachers would teach around 60 to 90 students per semester. Each group that they see in the face-to-face sitting would have around 10 to 16 students physically in the classroom. On Wednesdays, all students, again, would be virtual like in the middle school, and teachers would host virtual office hours and support sessions on those Wednesdays. In addition, they would have time for collaborative planning and professional learning on virtual platforms. On Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, teachers will have 75 minutes dedicated for virtual office hours for planning and virtual support of students. Some teachers may teach 100% virtually in this model, depending on the course offering and the number of student requests that we have for that. Something that I was very excited about and wanted to make sure was shared is that under this schedule, our children will still have access to a world-class career and technology education experience at Lexington Technology Center. The goal of this coursework will continue to be hands-on learning with real-life application. So the LTC will leverage a model that maximizes in-person hands-on learning so that students acquire the career-specific skills they need alongside mastering course content. Students who select to take courses at LTC will still have that option to earn career credits or certifications. Because some of these certifications are governed by outside agencies, the LTC will use the requirements of the certification to determine the schedule for that particular course. To support students in their endeavors to take courses at Lexington Technology Center, our draft team is proposing that core classes be offered to LTC for traveling students. Students that attend Lexington High School would continue to take their core classes at their home school. As a result of this change, the LTC will manage schedule conflicts and needs on a case-by-case basis should students have specialized coursework they need to complete for graduation. In addition, transportation will be provided to the LTC. However, we are recommending that the routes between instructional blocks be limited or eliminated when possible. Students will still have the option to drive or to be dropped off and picked up as they always have in the past. So in closing around the AB hybrid schedule, I just wanted to highlight two things. First, the schedule addresses safety. It maximizes exposure by creating half occupancy in the building and classes each day. And it minimizes transitions and allows ample time for students to transition between classes. Additionally, staff may have atypical duties, which includes bathroom and hallway supervision, behavior coaching, and extra support to students as needed. As with the other models presented tonight, the district will work with local medical professionals, the CDC, and DHEC to determine best safety protocols for entering, transitioning, and exiting the school, as well as the use of personal protective equipment. Second, the plan intentionally addresses students' need for social and emotional support. Students are provided a social and emotional support class each day that they are on campus through an advocacy period. In addition, teachers of this advocacy period will also provide a regular point of contact for families regarding check-ins and questions. So the virtual instruction option for families is the second opportunity or choice that a family could make. In the 100% virtual option, instruction will be provided through a variety of formats with accountability measures in place to ensure progress monitoring and student growth. Virtual support services and social emotional learning support will also be provided through a variety of formats like telephone calls, emails, and virtual platform meetings like Zoom and Google Hangout. So before I ended tonight, I would be remiss not to thank my team that I worked with over the past couple of weeks to develop these schedules. I want to thank the principals, assistant principals, and school staff listed here that served as our drafting team for the schedule options. I'm going to ask them to stand up if they'd like to, so that we can give them a round of applause for all of the hard work that they did. And when I say hours, it was hours and hours of study on their own, the different entry plans, as well as the work that I kind of harangued them to do when we met through Zoom and other meetings. So they did an amazing job in taking this feedback from stakeholder groups to ensure that our options met the needs of our children, staff, and families. Specifically, the drafting team correlated the stakeholder feedback with our options. By intentionally using this feedback to clarify and revise our plans, we are confident that school schedule options that we presented to you tonight ensure the safety and security of our students and staff, maximize learning experiences for children, and provide social and emotional supports that all students need while staying true to our mission and vision as a district. We could not have refined and produced these options without the support and work of the professionals listed here.